There's a little bit of boat preparation, okay, that are critical. Most critical things you can have is a clean bottom, a good clean bottom. You don't need to have a hoist to have that, although that makes it a little bit easier. And that's the only reason for a hoist, because you can have just as good a bottom sailing the boat wet as on a hoist. There's an extra 15 minutes of scrubbing up the bottom with a scrubber or something when you come out a couple times a month. The first 10 years we sailed the boat, and we sailed it wet, and we were winning some races and some club championships sailing the boat wet against, we had 10 boats dry sailed. Ours was the only wet sailed boat, and we were doing okay. So that's the first thing and probably the number one thing. You do need, there's some people that don't have all the instruments you need. I think, and we will talk about how we use 3 instruments. Number one is a Windex. It's the simplest. And everybody should have a Windex on their race boat. Second thing is you need a way to tell how fast you're going. You need a knot meter. Now, I'm going to call it a knot meter, but there are other ways to get your speed on the boat. You can use a GPS with the speed function. Most of them have it. Your cell phone and its GPS systems may well be able to handle speed over the water, or speed over the ground, actually. Same thing.
I'll say something about that. I've tried that, and it's not, the phone, at least my phone GPS is, the update is too slow.
Right.
And 1 knot is several feet per second.
Okay.
And if it only updates every couple of seconds, it's not accurate.
All right. Well, I don't know if my knot meter updates any more than that either, but I'm saying there may be alternatives, and you may have other instruments you can use. You also need a compass or a way to tell direction. The GPS and or a cell phone may be able to satisfy that need, and it may not. But I'm assuming that those 3 things will be on your boat. The other, we put it under boat preparation. The other thing is a little pre-race practice. When Randy and I go out, we sail the boat just as hard going out and around as we sail when we're racing. That's our first thing that we do. We also will do upwind beat on each tack, port, starboard, and figure out what the compass says, the current wind direction. And we will kind of continue to monitor that so that at the start we know what the wind was, and if the wind is boosome, we'll know we need to either stay on this tack or tack to a lifted tack. The other thing is that we will always throw a jibe or 2 and a tack or 2 in so that Randy and I get our rhythm back, shall we say, of tacking. Do I need to tack a little faster, a little slower, turning the boat? We just work on that every time we go out. And instead of just reaching up and down the line, you'll see us sometimes out here kind of left field. So that's boat preparation as far as I'm concerned. So now I'm going to talk about the start, leg 1, and some runs, and then we'll come back and work on the reaches. Okay. So the first thing, I love starts. I love to fool around and mess with people on the starts. Except maybe.
Say it ain't so.
Yes. So we're going to talk about that at the very end. We're going to talk about some start strategy. But my start strategy today is different from and last year is different from what it's been. And the start strategy today is just get a clean start, keep it simple. Get out, get clean, get going, and don't worry about messing with a bunch of other boats. I don't want to do that because, number one, it can foul me up. Number 2, I don't want to ruin somebody's race by being tactically aggressive before the start and putting them in a hole before the race has even started. So we want to make the start just as clean and simple as we can. The other thing, just a quick deal, is you're having a hard time coming up to the starting line on starboard, which is normally the way you'd approach the starting line, and you're having a hard time, you're kind of going parallel to it, know that you're going to want to probably tack to port as soon as you can cleanly do that, because that's now the lifted tack. And that's the easiest way to tell it. You'll know it right away if the wind has changed from earlier and so forth. And so, enough said. And I think I've covered I and B. A risky strategy, can value up and have yourself in a hole before the race is even started. So I try to keep it simple. Leg one and all windward legs. We're just going to call it a windward leg because the rules are basically the same. The first thing is, what instruments are you going to be using? Number one, your most important instrument is the compass, followed by how fast you're going. And by the way, on the knot meter, I've sailed on the knot meter, and I'm just sailing the heck out of it. The boat's all heeled, and we're all bound up in effect because we pulled the sails in too tight or something. Feels like we're going fast, and we're going 3.5 knots. And we ease things a little bit, and the knot meter all of a sudden will go 4.5 knots. And you can't tell necessarily by how things look or feel, or I can't. A better sailor might, but I'm not. Okay, on the windward leg, most important thing is to sail the lifted tack. And this is where I want to draw a little deal here. So here, we're headed for the mark, and we're going to do two things. We're going to do, there's our start line. We're going to do the lifted tack, so if the wind goes from here instead of here, moves this way, then this tack will go from here to be going like this, okay? Second thing, you see what happened here. Anybody? I'm doing this kind of quick. So that's what when it backs to the left, it'll lift this tack. If it had gone the other way, then this will look like this in the opposite direction. The second thing, and what we don't want to do when it does this, I see a lot of boats, they're coming along, you should be coming in about like that, but if you're coming in kind of parallel, having a hard time crossing the line, and you just keep going, and all of a sudden there's all these boats out here that haven't tacked yet. The club and the club racers have gotten a lot better at not making the mistake and ending up over here. One of the things you can tell when you're doing it wrong, or another thing, making a point, is you sail the longest tack. If you got this tack would be way long out here before you can come back. Here, this is the longest tack. Longest tack in a straight line is probably going to be your best tack to go on. And the reason is wind shifts are going to give you a chance to either head up a little more, or if you fall off, now all of a sudden, like this way, wind's gone back to normal, you got to deal like that. If you're if you've gone out and you hit the corner, this is the other thing that we don't want to do. If you go out here, you hit the corner and tack for the line on a single tack, if there's wind shifts, you're going to give them all up. So you can, if there's a wind shift back to here, and you can sail this direction, you just lost that much distance. So when you bang the corner, as they say, or you get out in the corners, wind shifts can go against you. And one of the things upwind is you avoid a ley line as long as possible. Our strategy, you've probably seen it, is to go up here, take a little wind shift, go up here, and then, or you might give you too many lines. We'll tack 3 or 4 or 5 times on a shifty day. And what we want to do then is to come into the mark on starboard if possible. And I like to make this ley line 200 feet long, not 200 yards, not a quarter of a mile. I like to make it a couple hundred feet long just to get the boat settled down, give Randy a chance to prepare the boat for the next leg. And a 200-foot ley line is really easy to judge and make the mark, as opposed to if I'm out here someplace and I don't know what the wind's gonna do, number one. Number two, you end up either overstanding, you end up here, or you get the wind shift against you, you end up down here. It's tricky, and it's hard, and you're at the mercy of the weather, the wind. Okay, so I like a short ley line. It's easy to call. And we've tacked in a winter regatta. Don't wait for a 10-degree wind shift. We won a race in a regatta tacking on a 2-degree wind shift. Actually, that's what I attributed the win at that regatta to, was a tiny little wind shift. I hadn't seen anything happen. Got a little lift, took it, and ended up winning that race. Okay, I think that's the...
Steve, a question.
Yes, sir.
So I understand what you're saying there. So let's say you're sailing the correct tack, but you're getting close to the ley line way too early. And you know if you tack away, you're going to be on a header.
So I don't tack into headers if I can help it.
Beg your pardon?
Well, then, okay, I think the answer to that question then, anticipating your question, is sail the longest leg. You got to go farthest distance on the longest leg. So if you've got a little new mark, okay, might be sailing into a header, but if I'm here and I can go this way,
No, that's...
and have a little short.
You're on the longest leg. It's a lifted, it's the right tack,
Okay.
but it's early in the race and you're getting way over to the ley line.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do? You know you shouldn't be on the ley line, but you know if you tack, you're going to go to a
Have
header.
you got a deck of cards on the boat? cut for
So-
highest card takes it.
Sometimes
Okay. Yeah. Sometimes there isn't a good. There aren't necessarily good solutions. Sailboat racing is kind of like playing cards or chess. You never know the hand you're going to be dealt, and so you do the best you can with it. And sometimes, you're finessing your king, and you lead it right into an ace. That's just the way it works.
the biggest thing that you probably should have in your mind there is what kind of day of sailing it is. If it's a very steady wind, you might go to the ley line. If it's a very shifty day, you probably would want to tack away. Is that correct?
Shifty days, stay in the middle. If you've got
That's
one,
my point.
what you're really saying is, if you've got one big, the wind's going to go from the east to the south, and that's it. Okay, play that game. But if you've got little shifts in there, you play that game.
Yeah.
Okay, question, the ley line, talk to make sure I'm clear on it. If, that is the line from the mark, that if you sail one course, let's say 45 degrees off of it, that's the
Right.
close haul. Yeah. Close haul.
Close haul ley line, you're upwind, okay? And when you hit this line, you can tack and make the mark.
But you're saying that's risky to go out to that and follow it in.
Stay away from the ley line as long as you can. I want to spend 200 feet on the ley line, not a quarter of a mile. Because I can call 200 feet and the wind's not going to change. So I'm not going to have, we're here, out here, let's say, this is the point I was going to make. When you're, another point is, so I'm coming up this ley line here, okay? And it ends up, I'm going to be 2 boat lengths shy of making the mark. Well, there are 2 things that you can do. Either one of them are very good. One's better than the other, I think. That is, what a lot of times we do, and I think it's a mistake, is to sail the boat and pinch, go really tight. And if you're pinching the boat to get up there, instead of going 5 knots, you're gonna go 4.5. And you're gonna go 4.5 knots for a long way, okay? What I would do, and what we normally do, is to run here, let the boat go a little freer, and maybe even end up here. When I see I'm gonna miss it, and I'll be going 5.25 knots, okay? And then I have this little, I do end up with a slow speed tack, but I think I'm better going 5 plus knots rather than 5 minus knots for a long time, and doing a little quick tack. If I'm going to miss the mark by a boat length, 30 feet maybe, boat length and a half, I will come down here on this mark, and then I will shoot the mark, go straight to, whoops, come on. Come here and then go straight upwind and go around. Shoot the mark. You kind of go up, go head to wind, let the sails flog, and the boat will coast around the mark. And if you miss it and you float it back into the mark, well, that's another set of problems. Okay.
On most of your maneuvers like that, except for shooting the mark, you try to do that outside the 3 boat length circle.
That would, that's getting a little aggressive, but you've got a boat that coasts better than some of ours.
Well, I mean, yeah, well, no, I'm saying, that when you get all the stacking and stuff, it's best to do that outside.
Absolutely right. I don't want to do any maneuvering, if I can help it, within 100, 150, 200 feet of the mark. I want that all done. Late mark maneuvering means you can't prepare the boat for going on the next leg and so forth.
Also, it helps in railway rules.
Absolutely right.
You come in on port, it's a mess.
Yes, truly is. Okay, let's talk about runs then for a little bit, and we'll come back to Harry Anderson. But, okay, wind's always from the top, right? So our mark is down here, and our boat is up here. And we're going this way with the wind. One of the things that we try to do is, and this is what instruments are important. You don't really need the compass, but what you do need is Windex #1 and your knot meter #2. Windex will tell you where the wind is, knot meter will tell you how well you're sailing the boat. So what I see in this, a lot of boats doing is sailing what's called the run line, right at the mark, okay, parallel with the wind, right ahead of the wind. When you do that, you can't sail as fast as the wind. Obviously, there are losses on the boat. Wind's blowing at 8, and you're going 5, 4. You're going 4 maybe. What we try to do is we are going to reach out here. Let's go this way first. Our runs are going to look a lot like our beats, as a matter of fact. So we'll come out here, do a jibe, come out here. This is our preferred strategy. And once again, we've got a deal to the mark of 150, 200 feet, maybe 100 feet. Depends on the day maybe. And we'll turn this way to go around. This is, let's just say it's 100, let's say it's 200 feet, okay? That gives Randy the chance to prepare the boat, take the pole down, prepare the boat for going around and going back upwind. A key part of our strategy is always to do our boat preparation for the next leg before you get to it. So if this was the mark you were coming around, let's see, yeah, like so. To go downwind, all our boat preparation is happening here. So when and I'll show you that in a little bit. There's 2 ways of doing it. This brings you in on starboard for the guys that don't want to approach this brings you in on port. Yeah, we're on port. The other way is to come this way, tack here, come in on port. You're on starboard back in here though. So, 2 different ways depending on your the boats around you. Both work better, but when we heat the boat up by sailing at a higher angle, the Windex is going to be, instead of going into the wind and then the Windex turned about 30, 40 degrees like so, okay, that's going upwind. Going downwind, the Windex is still here. It's pointing back here over the same set of flags as we had going upwind. If it's pointing, and the Windex is going to be pointing about just inside the flag or just inside the flag. If it's pointing like so, I think they're going to be slow. But this does a couple of things. When you heat the boat up, you get circulation across the sails. That means the wind is going sideways across the sails. Instead of being a barn door, like so, you've got an airplane wind, like so. The wind comes in and wraps around like that. That's called circulation. And does a couple of things. It makes the sail more powerful, more efficient. Instead of sailing down the run line at 3 knots, you can go 4.5 knots out here. Now you will sail 5% further, but you might go 25 or 30% faster. And another nice thing, on a hot day, you're getting wind around the boat as opposed to living inside just a stale, unmoving, hot deal on the boat. But this is one of the key things we think we do that lead to our success. We've had people told me, you come to a market, you guys just skitter away from us. Well, that's because we have done all our next leg preparation before we get to it. And so when we come to this mark, we already know what we're going to do. The sails are literally set as we go around the mark. And that, instead of saying, well, what are we going to do here? And starting to do your work down in here. And the second thing is, on the runs, which we think we do our boat going upwind, there isn't as, we don't beat the numbers relative to your numbers by more than a few seconds. Going downwind, we seem to get away again, and it's because we're sailing these reaches, these broad reaches in the bay to get, rather than doing a run line course, or even doing little mini deals like so. We get out here pretty good sometimes. And the other thing when you're doing this is downwind is the riskiest leg of sail for a lead boat because the wind feels in from behind. And we're sitting out here, sailing the boat like crazy, and all of a sudden the wind changes and it can blow you right down to us. So the key thing you want to be doing if you're chasing us down is looking backwards, not forwards, and try to get in front of those gusts of wind that are always coming down the lake. You look for a dark spot on the water, get in front of it and let it bring you down to us. We've had, it's amazing what that can do. Okay.
I don't know if you're going to cover it later, but how are you setting your sails for those?
Going to cover it later. Okay. So, depending on if the wind, one other thing, if the wind backs like from here, it was here, this is the assumption. If it backs from here, we're going to be on this leg because, the sails will look like that and the wind will be coming like so. If we were over here, we'd just be going downwind. We'd just be a barn door letting the wind move us. Circulation on your sails is a critical deal.
For the airplane guys, it's lift versus drag.
Yeah, I guess if you're only depending on drag to make the boat go, that's not very good.
It's either a parachute or a wing, and the wing's a lot better.
Yeah. Is this working for you guys so far?
Yeah.
Okay. Feel free to ask questions. I'll just go on. Okay, like I think I already covered the stuff on page 2. Downwind's our best leg. Higher angles, literally. When you're sailing this angle like so, it's, come on, who's got their geometry deal on the phone? You can tell we're going to sail on this hypotenuse versus this leg. 4 or 5% further is all, but literally, we've seen our knot meters go from 3 to 4.5, 50% improvement in speed. And it gets cooler, air conditioned. The other thing that's kind of important about the downwind sailing is that Capri 22 is powered up a little bit more than Catalina 22. If I was sailing a Catalina 22, I think, and or another boat that isn't powered up quite as much, I would emphasize the angle because that'll generate more power and it'll make a bigger difference for you guys than it will for our boat. I think so. Certainly I would want to try that.
You could look at if you really want to get technical, you could look at your polar charts and find out your best.
Well, that's another story. Does anybody know what a polar chart is? Would you? Okay. I was wondering about putting this in. So here's, the wind is always blowing from this direction, and a polar chart is going to start about here. Okay, here's the center. It's going to go like, look like a big ear, okay? Now, this angle of sail, about 45 degrees, is your maximum upwind speed because it's at the top of this deal here. Your optimum angle of sail going downwind is going to go down to the lowest part here. That's what your Windex ought to be showing you right there. That's just what the wind, upwind here, downwind here. And actually this is probably a little longer, but this is a broad reach out to here. Pretty close anyway. So this'll, if you go directly downwind, you see how it backs up? This isn't as fast as this is, and it's not as fast by that amount. Okay. Okay. Oh yeah, okay. I think we'll be grayed out by the end of the day.
Use white ink.
Pardon?
Use white ink.
A blue board instead of, okay. Okay. All right. We're going from a run to going upwind. What I do, or what we try to do, this is how we would do it. So we're coming in, typically, our preferred approach would be from the side. Like, we've come down here, we've jibed somewhere up here, maybe 2 jibes, whatever. This way and then this way. And we're coming in this way. First thing we're going to do, and our sails, okay, let's see, this would be, right, this would be the pole, this would be the main. Sails are going to look something like that, I think. Is that right, Randy? Okay, so in this last 150, 200 feet, the magic numbers for us, Randy's going to be taking everything down, and we're going to we just take the pole down, and this sail will then be over here. Now we are set to go upwind. The sails are in the right place. When we come to the mark, we don't look at the compass. I just look at the Windex. The Windex is pointing this way, and when I'm going to just come around here, oh, actually I just assumed the mark was over here, and I'm coming in here, and I'm going to come up tight to it like so, and I'm going to head upwind until the Windex is pointing the right direction. So it was pointing like so, and I'm going to spin, and it's going to be weird, and we're going to come around. I don't look at anything other than we're pulling in the sails like crazy to go upwind and watching the Windex. And when it hits the right general place, then we start setting the sails and looking at the compass, seeing if we're on the right course, the lifted tack, in other words. And that is just spinning up in here and coming out close to this, and doing all our work before we get here. It's the most important preparation, because upwind, you just got to make sure going upwind with the jib stuck to the pole is pretty ugly, needless to say. But the Windex is the key deal. That's why it's one of the key places you need it. After you get to this point, it's just a matter of following the general rules for any upwind leg. Get on the lifted tack, sail in the best wind. What you don't want to do, let's just say we're going for the finish, okay, is I'm going to go once again longest tack, and hopefully it's going to look something like that. What I would recommend that you not do is, and I see some people going out like this, and all of a sudden they end up here kind of no man's land, out in the corner, and then when they tack, they're on that line. But look how long that ley line is all of a sudden. Once again, if there's a wind shift, you've lost it. I see how close I can come, and then we start maneuvering. But coming around and going sideways, parallel to the start line is always a bad deal. So this is sometimes when it happens. Okay. So that's a mark grounding. Okay. Let's go. What am I going to do here? Just a second. Oh yeah. Okay, so we're coming to a reach. Here's the wind, and we're going to come around. I'm sorry, the wind's from down here this time. Okay, so we've come into the mark, and now we're going to go here. And this is a reach. The question that we face on our boat, and on your boats, it's exactly the same. Number one, you don't need a compass, because the course is defined for you. You're going to run in a straight line to the next mark. What you do need is a Windex and a knot meter. You need the Windex to know whether you're going to pull, and the knot meter to keep you sailing fast. So if your boat is like so, what you'd like to do is to pull out, and here's your, okay. That would be one way of doing it. But a lot of times you get what's called a velocity header. You're both sailing along fast, and it'll pull the wind around toward the front of the boat, and make this a little bigger. And if your Windex is pointing to the side, directly to the side, you can't put a pole up. You really won't be able to put a pole up. So the first thing to do as you go around the windward mark is to determine if you're going to be able to put the pole up. Now, if the wind is behind you, like there, which happens a lot of times on our reaches, especially, now you can put a pole up, because now it's more like this. You want your pole to be at a right angle to the wind. That way the sail won't backwind. The wind will come in from behind, fill the jib, and pull the boat along. If the boat's from the side, it will put wind in front of the sail and backwind it, bring it to a dead stop, actually. So that's the critical deal. How do you tell whether you're going to be able to put a pole up or not? You can tell that to some degree. I put Randy to work, and sometimes he puts the pole up, and I say, we're taking that down. But
The easiest way to tell is look at Steve out there and see what he's doing.
Well, that's not, we do, you can't, if you're not going to school on what we're doing, you're really missing a good lesson. Sometimes a lesson in what not to do. If you come in shallow to the mark, okay, that's because the wind is over here. That means when you go over here, it's probably not going to work. If you come in fat, that means the wind is more this way instead of this way. This means if the wind's here, you're going to have everything behind the pole. So fat is a pole. Skinny, if that's what it is, no pole. And you'll just be a flat reach with everything set out the way you normally do. It's the upwind settings. Okay, did I do that?
We did it short.
Well, we're going to come to that. Okay. We do another good leading question. We do another thing, and this is as good a time to handle it as any. Okay, so we're going this way. Okay. Now, there's our main. Now, the question would be if the wind's behind us or not. If the wind's behind us, then our jib is going to look like that on a pole. And now the wind is coming right in here. Okay? We've got circulation. It's just like a run, except a little exaggerated, where you have circulation around your sails that we talked about. Okay, so it comes around here, the jib pulls it around and puts a lot of high-speed air behind the main. It's exactly what you want. Now, if the wind is from that direction and we can't set it up with the pole, we're going to do a deal that looks something like that. And there's a picture of this later on. And we'll put a short pole, and I've overdrawn it a little bit. Okay, now we've got the wind coming in, the jib is hooking a bunch of air and exhausting it out here in front of and we've got circulation kind of like going upwind. But what the pole does for us, and once again, there's a drawing. Okay. Okay. There's our three sail options. This sail option is no pole, and because when you pull it in to make the front leading edge of the sail parallel with the wind, this tucks this back in. You get this big hooked jib. Main is pretty much the same either way. When we put a pole on, it pushes the bottom of the sail out, and just look at the difference in the slot. The slots from the back of the sail to the leading edge, and it chokes the slot. The other thing that this does, it opens, and now I've got all this air being exhausted over the main. It makes the main pull like crazy. That's what the pole from here to here does. It'll be 2/3 the length of a long pole, typically-ish, 60 to 70%. So if you got a 12-foot pole, it'll be a 7-foot pole, and that's what you need to do. Excuse me. Go ahead.
Quick question. Do you guys have two poles, or do you just have the adjustable ones?
Adjustable.
Do you short it up before you go up there then, or
We're talking
on
about
the mast?
We're talking about it the whole time.
What works better for you? Is it
Well, the short pole is pretty easy to handle. It depends. Of course, when we were doing the long pole, Steve gives me as much shade on that when I'm putting it out.
So Randy, you said you use one pole, but you adjust it.
Yes.
Right.
It's got
you got marks on it, right? It's about 7 feet, is what you're talking about?
Yeah, that's just a guess. You got it'll be different, depending on whether it's more upwind or a little more off the wind. The closer you get to this look, the longer the pole will be, because you got to push this sail further out, okay? If it's way upwind, and you might have a pull, so it can vary from here to here. If you see what I'm saying. It's not marking all the time. But you see the point, right?
So how far, like, forward of a beam for that, when, you know, like when the wind's not a beam? You know,
For this guy here, where it's directly a
so
beam,
it's a beam, you go to the short.
oh, if it's about 5 degrees, it needs to be, if it's, I got to be 5 degrees behind the beam before I can use a long pole and do this method. It's got to be.
How far forward do you let it go? How far do you know when it's too far forward?
But you don't, in terms of how far forward, if you have are you talking about the pole to windward?
I'm
Long
just
pole?
talking about, you say like, what if the wind is after
Oh,
the beam?
okay,
you go
yeah.
long pole, but if it gets a beam, you go to short.
Okay.
There's got to be a point where.
Yeah, okay. So here's the beam, okay? Now you can do wind to beam, and your pole will be forward of that. It has to be, right? And that's going to give you a sail shape that looks like that. And because the wind is coming in here, you're actually sailing your jib in reverse, the flow, instead of from the leading edge to here. Now, if I and if it's even more, you can make it even worse, and you end up with a sail that looks like that. It just makes this big bag in the front, right? So if it isn't back kind of like like this, and my sail isn't looking like that, we're going to go to the other side, because this I don't think is very fast. It's not a very efficient sail. Or we go to a short pole, and we end up with a sail that looks like that. Now, when the pole is out, it does two things. Number one, it makes the sail flatter and gives you a sail that looks more like a wing. The second thing it does is, this is our mast, okay? And the pole attachment on the mast is above the attachment to the sail. So when you pull it in, it goes like so, right? And what that does is the top of the sail, when we're this way, top of the sail is wide open, and it's just kind of like a flag. It's not generating any real lift. And so when you pull this and it pulls down, it closes the top of the sail, and I'm not good enough to draw, but you see what I'm saying? If all of a sudden we're using the top half of the sail way better than we were free flying the jib. Okay? That's what the short pole does. It makes the top of the sail work on a reach, and it makes the bottom of the sail look more like a wing, like this. 25 years ago, you couldn't do that. About 25 years ago, maybe about 2000, 25 years, you couldn't run an outrigger. This is considered an outrigger because it pushes out on the sail, and you couldn't do that. But the America's Cup boats, I think, were the ones that caused it to change. They had so much pressure on the sails, they had to run outriggers, little 8-foot tubes that ran sideways from the mast down close to the deck, and they would run their spinnaker lines through that, and it's considered an outrigger, and it kept them from breaking their mast. So they just said, you can all do that, and I've been doing it for 20 years, give or take, Randy, and we get it wrong at 25. When you're coming around the mark trying to figure out which way it's going to be, we get it wrong 25% of the time. So, it'll give your crew something to do. Okay, that's reaches. Let's talk about a Harry Anderson reach, and we're right here. So we've gone around the mark here, and we're going to run this way to another mark. Okay, once again, the leg is defined in terms of direction, so you don't need a compass, you just aim for the mark. The only issue is speed. Now on this, because the wind's coming from the side here, our sails are going to look like this to a short pole, and to a main it looks like that. Okay? And once again, if we go back to this deal here, without the pole, you're going to get a baggy, because it's got to pull in like so. You're going to get a baggy sail. We get a more sail, better at the bottom, better at the top. When we come within, because this mark rounding is the easiest one of all, I think. And when we come to that mark, Randy will be up here. Normally we do two things. Randy extends the pole, and actually, maybe this is a good time for the pictures. I'll just talk about it first. Randy will extend the pole from short to long, full length, and we only have one thing to do. We go around the mark, and we're going to head off this way, or we're going to head off this way. The preference is, for me, is to go that way. And I don't know why. Okay, well, let's just say that's right. That's right. So all I have to do is jibe the main. And he does all his work right in here in the shelter of the main, which is one of the points, good enough time to make it as any. We do all the work for Randy that he can when the sail of the jib is behind the main, because it takes two-thirds of the pressure of the force off of that sail, and it makes his life a lot easier. For the first 10 years, I didn't pay any attention to that. We always came back with blood on the boat. It was Randy's blood, so it wasn't like it was a huge problem. Anyway, that hardly ever happens anymore. Okay.
So Randy, do you just extend that while it's still attached then? So you don't have to end up
Just get it out, and then
lift it out?
and then as soon as we go around the mark, I'm pushing it out,
Okay.
Steve's jiving, and
Actually,
we're going fast.
he puts the sail, the jib out on full extension while it's still behind the main. We haven't got to the mark yet. And then he always goes forward on the pole side, so he'll be going forward to do his work on leeward here. Grab the pole, extend it, fasten it just as we get to the mark. We go around the mark, and he will come back then on the side that the main is on. And sometimes I can get it across in time, but he will oftentimes have to pull it around for me and push it. So that's our rule. Okay. Okay. Let's talk about the finish. We're getting there. Okay. All right. Coming to the finish, there's two things. Generally, what you'd like to do, there we go. Going to have two finish lines. If the finish line is square to the wind, okay, that's this one here. Doesn't really matter which end you cross on, okay? But if the finish line is favored for a port start, or the wind is shifted here, like so, then you'd prefer to finish at this end, because this end is further away, because you're coming from down here. If it's the opposite would be true if that was the finish line, okay? How do you know? Well, there's two ways to know. And the easiest way to know is, number one, your eye. This is it's an eyeball deal, or number two, it's a history deal. If the line was square when you started and you're not aware of a wind shift, it doesn't really matter which end you finish on. If the line looked like this, and Preston was trying to port tack the entire field, like he has a tendency to do, good for you, then you'd want to start at the opposite end. So if this was favored at the start, this is favored at the finish. And the opposite is obviously true. And it's not harder than that. Here's what you don't want to do though. Sometimes I see some boats and they're sailing in at an angle like so. That happens a lot. It's really almost parallel, and it may even be parallel to the finish line. That is not getting you any closer. So if this is the line we're talking about and you're coming in kind of like so, you can go and you can tack and that'll finish you. Except you could have done the same thing down here. Waste. That is time lost. Okay? And I think the rule is going to be if you can cross the finish line here, or you can cross it as soon as you can. What you don't want, this is just as bad almost, is you can go this way and have to finish down here. If you can cross the finish line at any point, go for it. Don't ever sail parallel or semi-parallel to it. I've even seen some people sailing away from it. I say, tack, tack, you know. But that's what I can tell you about the finish. Okay, winning strategies. We've really talked about them, most of them, but I'll just do a quick review. Number one, get a clean start. A strategy that we haven't talked about, though, is this has been used to beat us some in the past. It's been a while, but you can sail your, quote unquote, your own race, go out and bang a corner and come in. 10% of the time, maybe, that's okay. It might actually help you. Another thing that I think would do better for you is to sail our wake. We had some people that aren't in our club anymore. We'd go tacking up the lake, and they would be tacking right behind us, sailing exactly the same water. That's okay, and they're sailing in the same wind normally. And then it's just a matter of who sails their boat closer to the number. It particularly works well it works well upwind, it works well downwind. Reaches really doesn't. You're all sailing in the same water anyway. But that was been used to beat us in the past. Stay away from the corners, like I said. Identify downwind legs. Find your best wind. Something we haven't talked about is, well, we did talk about it. Talked about sailing high versus sailing versus reaching off just a little bit. On a course, let's just say that's the course that you're able to sail relative to the wind. You got the boat pointing really good and so forth, and you're going five knots. Okay, I say sailing fast is sailing better. Okay, I might reach off, come down here. What is that? 3 degrees? I'm going to give up that much ground, but instead of sailing 5 knots, I might be going 5.4, 5.5, 4/10 of a knot. I can't even walk that slow. I can crawl faster than that, except that's a 10% improvement. 10% improvement. I think, and I'm going to give up 1.5%. I don't know. I'm always going to tend to sail a little faster than pointing high. It's especially true in the lower the wind speed, the more true that it is. High speed, when you got high speed winds, you're already going as fast as the boat's ever going to go. Doesn't do you any good to fall off a little and sail the same speed, okay? But if it's a low spin day and you're trying to make all the power that you can, give up a degree or 2 or 3. and I think it will help. Downwind, once again, maintain circulation over your sails versus sailing the rum line, being a barn door. And 7, 8, 9 here are sailing the lifted tacks upwind. I have 7, 8, 9 because I think it's 3 times as important as probably anything else we've mentioned. Will help you. Okay, got a page 4? Because we got some diagram figures. For the scientists among us, it's a figure. It's a diagram as far as I'm concerned. Okay. I want to talk about the start. And okay. You've got the figure, but I'm going to, here's your start line, here's a ley line, here's a ley line, here's a ley line, here's a ley line. Okay. Okay, clear as mud. So what you've got here is most sailors will take the most comfortable starting position there is, option rather, and they're going to come out of this general area and reach in and head up, like so. Okay. That's an appropriate way to start, but it's also kind of a risky way to start. We've also got the people at the other end trying to do their port start things, and that's a lot of fun too. But so we've got a triangle down here. If you find yourself in this area, or even over here, I'm going to say you're trying to do a port start, and I'm probably going to come after you because if I foul you up by running down the line and get here at the same time you do, I might start a boat length behind you, or you might beat me by 2 boat lengths, but it's going to be a 2 boat length difference. If you port start and I'm clear down here, you could have a 20 boat length lead on me. So we try to prevent that. So if I see you down here, I'm not trying to foul you up. I'm just trying to make sure that you don't start with a 20 boat length lead. That works for me though, if I start with a 20 boat length lead. Okay. This is the folks reaching in, and you've got basically your one rule is it's all about barging, right? So you got to come in a parallel deal and so forth, kind of tend to line up. You have boats crossing over a 30-second period of time. This is the attack triangle. And this is what we call the shooting gallery. Because if you think about a shooting gallery and you got these ducks running across back and forth, and they represent a shooting gallery. That's what each boat does. You got a boat coming in here and a boat here and so forth, another couple of boats. My favorite start, which I don't use very much because it's more aggressive than I want to be, is to come in here on port. I have absolutely no rights of right-of-way by sailing this direction. All these people have rights over me and can determine where I go. But I can come down here and do either attack or a jibe, and I'm coming in underneath of you. And in 15 seconds, the right-of-way advantage has changed. I have all the rights here, you have none in terms of barging. And so it's the shooting gallery. I pick out the boat I want to hammer and sail in and tack right under him. And here's a boat, and here's I am. You're probably going to end up doing that and coming in and be the last boat to start. That's why it's a neat starting technique, because people ignore you here. We had a neat regatta at Lake Texoma, We had about 14 boats, I think, in our class, and 14 of them were all down here that day. I don't know why. They were all down here, and Desperato was over here saying, "Where'd everybody go?" You know, we're gonna have a race here in a little bit. And so they're all over here lined up. We went in here and did a jibe, I believe, Randy? Jibe underneath them, and jibe pretty much just barely above the ley line, and worked our way back. About 5 boats did the circle over here, and the other guys tried to duck us, but because they were all tangled up with one another and we were 3 boat lengths ahead, when we tacked in front of them, it was a neat event. So just beware if you see something like that happening. I'm not going to use that, but if somebody is coming up here and they yell "no room," you better count on there not being room between you and to fit into between my boat and the committee boat. So I won't mislead you, but if somebody yells "no room," you got to be prepared to bail and give them room, is what I'm saying. Question. It's kind of fun. Okay. We call this the golden triangle, and then I'll quit. Golden triangle, because if you're on port, if you're in this triangle, you can go this way, you can go this way, you can go any direction without a tack or a jibe. You can cross the line because you're within ley lines. Okay, that's why I golden triangle. Okay, you were talking about, we talked a long time about upwind sail shape, and I do want to say how we adjust our sails there. And in the other one, you can see where I've tried, this figure here, I've tried to indicate what the pole, the short pole does. And here we have the long pole. Okay, I want to talk, okay. When we adjust our sails for going upwind, they look something like that, right? So Randy pulls this into a pre-established, our normal position. And we can tell what that is because the sail normally just touches our lifelines and makes a little dent in the sail, if you will, in its shape. And we pull it in and set it there. That happens first. Then fine-tuning, I ease the main. It goes out this way. I ease the main until the front 10% of the sail, let's just say, starts to flutter. It needs to be, we call it being alive, and we ease the sail to it until it flutters just a little bit. Starts not luffing, but just flutters. And that's how we go upwind. It's not harder than that. End of story, really. In terms of the cord, this distance here between the mast, how much curve we put on the sail, it runs typically 6, 7, 8 inches. It needs to be about like, how far, Randy? This much? This much? 8 inches. Not too much, but not too flat. I see some sails that are almost dead flat down here. You know, almost no curve, and I don't see any that run as much curve as I do. The advantage of the curve is it's a more powerful wing. The rule of thumb on the amount of cord is on a very light air day, you have less cord. On a very heavy air day, you have less cord, and you have a pretty amount of cord that makes it look like an airplane wing the rest of the time in the middle wind speeds. We don't pay much attention to that. We will flatten the sail out if it's blowing hard, but you know, we don't flatten it much for light air days. Now that's going upwind. When we're going off the wind, this sail will end up out like that, short pole, and this sail will end up about like so, and we'll literally bag that sail. Notice how they're the same shape, okay? I call it bag the sail, right, Randy? And This distance, instead of being 7 or 8 inches, 18 inches, it's this far. It's just maybe 2 feet some days. The whole idea is the wind is coming in here, parallel to the leading edge. The wind is coming in here, parallel to the leading edge. That's the way airplanes' wings normally fly, and that's the whole point. It looks kind of strange some days, but when we started doing it off wind days, we might go from 2.5 knots to 3.5 knots. It's hard to argue about a 30% improvement, you know. We don't use our traveler very much. We don't make halyard adjustments anymore that we used to. The only adjustments we use is the main sheet and the jib sheet and the outhaul. And Cunningham. Never. Oh, unless we're doing never during the race. No Cunningham adjustments during the race. You might need that for adjusting sails to wind speed or so forth, and heeling. The other thing that this does you, when we're back to going upwind, the thrust of the sail is at a right angle to the boom. And so it's actually, if you look at it, the length of this dimension is your heeling moment, and the length of this dimension makes the boat go forward. So the further out that it runs, you end up with longer thrust and shorter heeling. But we all know that from sailing the boat. It's just that there is a scientific reason for it. Okay. Once again, if we're doing the downwind rung, we've got a long pole, and the long pole will normally be at a right angle to the wind. So the wind is coming in where the wind X is where it's at. You're going to have the pole and the boom at a right angle. But it's not a barn door. We're coming in and we're sweeping around the jib and we're sweeping around the main, and we're generating lift. Okay? That is the key part. I just wanted to show you one other thing. Okay. You're going to have to share because I didn't make enough of these. Here, you guys can look over your shoulder or something. Okay. This picture was taken about 4 years ago, I think, when we were running a Harry Anderson course, and you can see the one boat behind us. But okay, so we're coming into the starting line mark for a Harry Anderson course, and the things I want you to look at is look at the leading edge of our jib. It's got a tiny little dip in it. That is because we're not to the mark yet. The mark is right here. You can see it in yellow. We're not at the mark yet, but Randy has taken the pole off the mast and he's extending it. And to give him a little slack, I probably have eased the jib 3 or 4 inches, so now it's luffing just a little bit. But that's what's going on in picture number 1. We're not quite to the mark, but Randy's working the pole. Now let's go to picture number 2. Okay, well, picture number 2. I need to see it. Okay. Picture number 2, we're just coming to the mark. And at this point, Randy is starting to pushing the pole out. You can see the jib is pushed away a little bit. It's still pulling like crazy, though, even though we're we're working things, I'm keeping a little pressure on so the jib probably, is still working. So that's what's showing in number 2. I'm just starting to bear down to the mark. Okay, now this is the one I like the best.
So, Ray, Steve, since you're working the head sail sheets.
And the main sheet and the tiller.
Okay, so
I'm a little overwhelmed at this point.
Are you behind the traveler when you're doing this?
I straddle it.
You straddle it? And then when...
Yeah, normally I actually have to get in front of normally I straddle the traveler. When we're doing all this maneuvering, I generally move in front of it because I got to reach up forward to where the...
That's what I do when I'm sailing by myself.
Exactly.
And then the other is, do you have your sheets on the normal position or are you cross sheeting?
No, normal position, we don't cross sheet.
Okay.
I said it, the boat is set up for cross sheeting. We aren't smart enough to keep the lines all straight. There's too many, not smart enough. Okay, now in picture 3, where are we here? Okay, yeah. You can see the mark is just behind us. And I need to see it a second. Yeah. Okay, you can see the mark is just right at the stern. The jib is all the way out on a long pole, okay? And the main is amidships because we pulled it in and it's in the process of jibing. It's coming across. So it's amidships in item 3. And in item 4, we're a boat and a half length away from the mark and the jib's pulling. The main has now come around to its new downwind position and it still hasn't filled yet. We have so much speed that it's luffing a little bit, but the wind is getting behind it and filling it. You know, boat length out from the mark, and everything is everything is done. And Randy is in the back of the boat by 3. You'll see he's opening a beer for me, or not. Okay. That's probably that's as good a mark rounding as we will ever make. That's what we strive for. And if you guys want to practice mark roundings and the Harry Anderson course and that inside mark rounding is the easiest one to make. Okay. I think with that I'm done, except for questions if you've got any. Okay.
The only thing I would add to
Yeah.
is we're talking all the time, especially we're coming in
Hang on.
thinking about rounding the mark. We're talking and saying, okay, what do you want to do, Steve? Which side of the pole? Which side? Where do you want to set the pole? What do you want to do? And that's a big part of it. And now, we did talk a lot about the pole. Some of you don't have them, but
Yeah, I think
it's good to have them.
I take it for granted that you will have a pole. If you don't have a pole, you're going to be doing, I don't know. Okay, we're going to run. Okay, if you don't have a pole and you're here, normally I run like this, right? Okay, and here's the run line. You're going to want to go about like that. You're going to be as far out as you were going upwind, so you can make that jib and your main work. You got to have wind coming in like so to make the jib work. It's not optimum.
Do you ever do wing and wing?
Oh, wing and wing is downwind. You'll look at figure.
Are you without the pole?
Yeah.
Oh, without the pole, no. If I didn't have a pole, I would try because it's your best chance, but you need a pole.
I don't know about anybody else, but I don't think our pole extends or shortens.
No, it's all set. Fixed.
Okay.
So just one line.
Well, then you're
Is it
going.
there? Is it
It's going to
there?
look like the downwind figure in my.
We just use the big pole.
Yeah, exactly. That's spinnaker pole because it's not adjustable. It gets you 90% of the way there. Is what I would tell you. So use it. Yeah.
So you mean where you have short poles, you use big.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Have I bored you? All righty then. Thank you. Appreciate the interest.